Okay, so you want to buy a cruise ship. The plan is simple. Buy the boat, fill the cabins, collect the fares, and sail off into a sunset you technically own. Money isn't the problem for you. The problem is the boat. But here's the strange part. A cruise ship is the closest thing shipping has to a guaranteed profit machine, and it's also the business that keeps taking the biggest, richest operators on the water and quietly dragging them under. Every passenger who steps aboard is basically guaranteed to spend more than they cost you. On paper, you only need to fill about half the cabins to break even. Half you could sail a ghost ship and still cover your costs. The math says you can't lose. The owners lose anyway. Some of the most famous names on the ocean have come one bad quarter from the bottom. So which is it, a license to print money or a very elegant way to drown in it? So by the end of this, you'll know exactly what one of these things costs, from a boat you could almost afford to a floating city you can't. You'll know where the money actually comes from, which is not where you think. You'll know what it costs just to keep one afloat for a single day before a single guest steps on board. And you'll understand why almost no human being on Earth actually owns one of these, and why the ones who do aren't really running a boat at all. First, let's go shopping. Because a cruise ship isn't one purchase. It's about 5 completely different businesses wearing the same coat of paint. The cheapest way in is an expedition ship. Small, 8 to 20,000 gross tons, room for 150 to 300 people. Aurora Expeditions Douglas Mawson is 8,000 tons, sleeps 186, and runs you about $65 million. Windstar's Starseeker, around 130 million. That's the pocket money tier. A rounding error with a hull. Move up and you get a mid-size ship. 60 to 80,000 tons, 1,000 to 1,500 berths. Oceania's Allura, 67,000 tons, about $660 million. Now you're a real cruise line. Then the large mainstream ships, 140 to 175,000 tons, 3 to 4,000 passengers. Celebrities excel, around $1 billion. Star Princess, 175,000 tons, also around $1 billion. This is the tier most people picture when they hear the word cruise. A floating resort with a casino, a theatre, a water park, and a debt schedule longer than the buffet. And then the top of the market. The mega class, 200 to 250,000 tons, up to 5,500 people. Royal Caribbean's Star of the Seas is 250,000 tons, 5,610 berths, and it costs about $1.6 billion. Disney's Destiny, a little smaller, around 900 million. Can you picture it? One boat. The price of a skyscraper. And people are buying. 56 of these ships are on order between now and 2036. $56.8 billion of boats. Want yours to run on cleaner LNG instead of heavy fuel oil? Add 5 to 10% to the sticker. The boat, it turns out, is the cheap part, which raises the real question. Where does the money actually come from? Because it is almost never the ticket. There are 2 streams. The fare gets someone on board. Everything after that is where you live. And the fare honestly barely matters. The industry averages around $228 a passenger per day on the ticket. And that number has crept up maybe $33 in 5 years. Slow, grudging, not where the growth is. Here's where the growth is. In 2023, Norwegian earned about $268 per available berth per day, all in. Sounds healthy, but look at what's underneath it. Onboard spending runs around $86 per passenger per day. Drinks, the casino, the spa, the shops, the excursions, the Wi-Fi they charge you for like it's 2004. Roughly a third of all cruise revenue never touches a ticket. For Norwegian, out of $8.5 billion in a year, nearly $3 billion of it was on board. $3 billion from people who already paid to be there, and that money is worth more. A ticket carries maybe 10 to 20% margin. Onboard spending 20 to 40. Sure, excursions get sold to you at 3 to 4 times what they cost the line. The spa, 30 to 50% margin on a hot rock and a robe. Easiest way to picture it. The ticket is the door fee. The ship is the casino. Getting in is cheap on purpose. Being inside is the entire business. There's nowhere to walk to, no competing bar down the street, no cheaper option 3 blocks over. Just you, a wristband linked to your credit card, and 1,100 miles of open ocean. Cheap to board, expensive to float. So if every single passenger is basically guaranteed to spend more than they cost you, how does anyone lose money doing this? Start with the bill that lands before a single guest walks up the gangway. Okay, the deal is done. You've signed the check, wired the $1.6 billion, and shaken the hand of a very happy man from Fincantieri. And now the bill for the first day of ownership. Roughly $1 million. And that's before you've sold a single ticket. Where does that come from? Let's break it down. On a big ship, the crew alone runs $50 to $60 per passenger per day. Fuel, 30 to 40. That thing burns 50 to 70 tons of it a day. And when fuel hit $830 a ton, that's tens of thousands of dollars gone before breakfast. Food 15 to 20 a head, then everything else. Port fees, maintenance, the office back on shore. Another $40, $50 per passenger per day. Add it up, and a large ship costs somewhere between $135 and $180 per passenger per day just to operate. Multiply by 5,000 people. That's the better part of $1 million a day. And that's just the running costs. Insurance on the hull is $2 to $5 million a year, before the liability coverage that keeps a lawyer from owning your boat. Every dollar of that ticket you did sell, you're handing 10 to 20% of it straight to the travel agent who booked it. Every 3 years the ship goes into dry dock for a full month, out of service, earning nothing, while you spend $80 to $150 million on a refit. Then the regulators show up. Scrubbers to clean the exhaust, $3 to $5 million. Ballast water treatment, another $1 million. And a carbon bill under the EU's emissions scheme that runs into the hundreds of millions across a fleet and only goes up from here. And quietly, in the background, the ship is dying. It loses value every year you own it. On a billion-dollar vessel, that's $30 to $50 million of depreciation annually, whether you think about it or not. Millions a year, just for some incomprehensible paperwork and the slow fact of getting older. Put it all together, and a megaship burns close to $1 million a day just to exist. No passengers, no profit, just the privilege of floating, which is exactly how a business with guaranteed math still manages to bankrupt the smartest operators on the water. There are a lot of ways to sink a cruise line, but two mistakes show up over and over. Mistake 1, leverage. You didn't buy that ship. The bank did and handed you the keys. Cruise ships are roughly 85% financed with debt, 10 to 15-year loans backed by export credit agencies of whole countries. And the thing about debt is that it doesn't care whether anyone's sailing. In 2022, Carnival paid $1.6 billion in interest. In 2023, Norwegian paid $728 million. That's not the cost of running the ships. That's just the cost of having borrowed to buy them. Mistake 2, the fixed cost trap. When a hotel empties out, you send staff home and turn off the lights. A cruise ship can't. It still burns 50 to 70 tons of fuel a day, whether it's full or half empty. So when occupancy slips, revenue falls off a cliff and the costs barely move. Drop occupancy 10 points and you can wipe out 10 to 15% of your operating profit. And fuel makes it worse. It doubled in a single year, from $515 a ton to $830. In a normal year, you break even around half full. Double the fuel, and now you need 70% of every cabin sold just to survive. And then came the year that combined every one of those mistakes at once. In 2020, the entire global cruise fleet stopped. Every ship, all of them. Hundreds of billion-dollar vessels tied up at once, all over the world, earning exactly nothing. But the interest didn't stop. The loans didn't pause. The crews still had to be paid. The engines still had to turn over. The insurance still came due. Companies that had never missed a payment in their lives were suddenly staring at billions in debt against $0 in revenue. Month after month after month. This is the part nobody prices in when they run the happy version of the math. There is no such thing as turning a cruise line off. You can stop the passengers. You cannot stop the bill. The guaranteed money machine sat perfectly still in the harbour, and the meter kept running the entire time. That's the part the math on the brochure never shows you. The ship doesn't have to sink to ruin you. It just has to stay in port. So let's pull it all together and answer the actual question. How much do you make if you do this right? Take one megaship, $1.6 billion, about 5,600 berths. Scenario 1, the optimistic case. You sail full every voyage all year. Net yield around $267 per birthday. Costs around $180. That's about $87 of margin per berth per day. Over 2 million birthdays in a year, that's roughly $178 million. Pay your $80 million in debt service, and you clear around $100 million a year. Run it as a whole fleet in a good stretch, and the illustrative numbers get even prettier, $500 million in cash flow a year and climbing. On a $1.6 billion boat, that's a payback of about 16 years. The ship lasts 30, so the back half of its life is nearly pure profit. Not bad, right? Scenario 2, the realistic case. Occupancy slips to 75%. Fuel spikes. Suddenly you need 70% of cabins full just to break even, and you're barely above it. The margin per berth collapses because, remember, the costs don't move. That 100 million in profit evaporates, and after debt service, the ship that was printing money starts quietly burning it. Same boat, same crew, same ocean. The only difference between $100 million year and a losing one is how many cabins you sold and what fuel cost that week. Two things you don't control. So if you do decide to buy a cruise ship, just remember what you're actually buying. It isn't a boat. It's a $56 billion industry that runs on other people's money, financed by banks and entire governments, where the person whose name is on the ship is the least important number in the deal. You're not the owner. You're the guy holding the loan. And here's the part that really stings. That $1.6 billion palace? In 25 years, it's worth less than a quarter of what you paid. And at the very end, when the pools are drained and the casino goes dark, it doesn't sell as a ship at all. It sells for scrap. $500, $600, $700 a ton. Your floating city, priced by the pound. So by all means, buy the cruise ship. Just know the only guaranteed winner in the whole business is the bank that loaned you the money to sink.